So, Disney Star Wars has absolutely been dying off ever since 2017's The Last Jedi by director Rian Johnson, and basically what Kathleen Kennedy has been allowing year by year for this franchise that was once, of course, catered to George Lucas, that is no longer catered to his philosophy and his vision of what the franchise is all about. This is IGER. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at IGER1. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So if you don't know Leslye Headland, I think that everyone should know, or at least look her up, of who she really is, and in my book, she's worse than Kathleen Kennedy. Not that I'm defending Kathleen Kennedy, but she really is way more extreme than Kathleen Kennedy when it comes to her overall agenda for Star Wars. Now, she's the showrunner and director of the Acolyte TV series, which, by the way, arrives on June 5th, which is set to break the rules of Star Wars and George Lucas's philosophy of the franchise. Now, one thing about everything related to Leslye Headland is that she has been wreaking havoc over at Disney based on all the Star Wars related material moving onwards. Now, there's a lot of things to discuss here, so I do suggest that you guys stick around, because what's interesting about Leslye Headland is the fact that not only is she a Kathleen Kennedy hire, alright, she is someone that Kathleen Kennedy seeked out, that Kathleen Kennedy chose specifically. She believed that she fit the job of the showrunner of the Acolyte series, which, by the way, is going to be a woke disaster. We know it, and they know it. However, on top of all of this, we already know that the Acolyte series is going to be quite large when it comes to how many fans are going to be pretty much running for the hills when it comes to canceling, of course, Disney Plus and getting away from Disney Star Wars for good, and the reason has a lot to do with their agenda spilling into this. Now, currently, those like Kathleen Kennedy and Kevin Feige have already ruined the legacy of both Marvel and Star Wars, as Bob Iger begins to create a strategy to head into damage control over the entire situation. Now, one major development has to do with a recent warning that was made by multiple Disney analysts to the Disney Board of Directors recently and Bob Iger about how the Acolyte series by Leslye Headland is already causing Disney to lose billions of dollars in revenue after their in-depth research of fan engagement levels hitting an all-time low for the Acolyte series, and how it is set to negatively impact the upcoming Star Wars films for both 2026 and 2027 as far as box office projections go. The Disney analyst that came to the conclusion that director and showrunner Leslye Headland already prematurely lost Disney billions has to do with a recent massive dip in Disney Plus subscribers, specifically viewers that are catered to watching Star Wars related entertainment on that platform. This dip was said to be around 2%, which is quite large considering how rapid the change was within just a matter of weeks after Headland made many controversial statements about George Lucas and breaking the rules of Star Wars. Now, the Acolyte is already projected to be a project that will create a larger divide and a loss of fans than The Last Jedi ever did back in 2017. The warnings that were given out by the analysts over at Disney to the Disney heads were reportedly disregarded. With Leslye Headland known to be way more extreme than Kathleen Kennedy ever was, this is already spelling a recipe for disaster. Ever since the Acolyte was announced for a June 5th release date, those like Iger and the board have already held a meeting with the Disney analysts that examined data such as engagement levels on the platform catered to Star Wars movies and TV shows. Already, Disney's Bob Iger cut back tens of millions of dollars in marketing funds for the Acolyte series that they already invested in, that have now gone to a complete waste and is set to create a domino effect, resulting in less exposure for the series. Now, the loss of billions, however, is not just limited to Leslye Headland's collision with the Acolyte series, creating a negative reaction for all projects afterwards, but also Bob Iger already cancelled several Star Wars projects that were, of course, Star Wars centered for George Lucas, that were going to hold no DEI agenda. This, of course, change was made after Leslye Headland suggested to Kathleen Kennedy to reason with Iger to cancel those slate of movies and TV shows that were greenlit years ago, we're talking back in 2016, and remained in limbo mode, that were described as non-woke and agenda-free projects, essentially, that respected George Lucas. These projects by the Disney analysts, of course, that they projected would have easily garnered well over $10 billion over the course of 3 years, which consisted of a total of 6 projects that held zero agenda. It involved 3 major movies and 3 high-budget Star Wars TV shows, catered to classic characters and, of course, George Lucas's vision. One of which focusing on the return of a young version of Luke Skywalker, much like how he was inserted in The Mandalorian Season 2 and the Book of Boba Fett. Now, this is all Leslye Headland's doing after convincing Kennedy to reason with Bob Iger to cancel those non-woke Star Wars projects that were going to honor and respect George Lucas's vision and his philosophy of the franchise altogether. Disney analysts have actually been ignored in the entire process. Now, here's the problem with this, guys, that I think a lot of people need to realize is that Leslye Headland has been openly clear that if you believe that George Lucas is the key to making Star Wars a success, then you're a misogynist. Then that's the misogyny. That's the problem. She said that on a podcast. She has also said this once more recently to the general public when promoting the Acolyte series, and she couldn't make it any more clear. She wants to really put it out there that if you support George Lucas, then you're a misogynist. That's basically what it boils down to, because she believes that George is not necessarily the key or the only answer to making Star Wars great when it comes to his style or his vision or how Star Wars works through his vision. And look, guys, I mean, sure, everything doesn't have to be about the Skywalkers. I get that. That's not what I'm getting at all. That's not what I'm saying. But what should be applied to Star Wars is what made the original trilogy so great, what made the prequels so great. And yes, the prequels had a divide back then, but it grew on fans over the years, unlike the sequels, which are not growing on fans, as initially promised by Disney. Do you guys remember when Kathleen Kennedy said that the prequels would grow, or should I say the sequels would grow on fans, much like the prequels did? It's not happening. People still hate The Last Jedi, people still hate The Rise of Skywalker, and people are still unconvinced about everything moving forward by Disney with what they are doing with the Star Wars universe. Now, again, we got 2 movies coming out next year, or should I say in 2026, I should say, that's going to go into production next year. That, of course, is the Rey Star Wars film and the Mandalorian and Grogu movie for 26. Then you got James Mangold's movie for 2027. Now, basically what they want to do is they want to set up this format where you get 2 Star Wars movies a year. Whether or not that's going to be excessive really depends on how well written and or directed these movies are going to be. Obviously, the Rey movie is going to be a disaster. We all know this, based on what Shamreen Obaid Chinoy said about how this is a movie for women, by women, and that it's to be respected. And they're focusing on an agenda once again and not a proper story. And it's not just that. Who asked for Rey's return again? We finished up her trilogy, let's call it quits already, right? So overall, guys, I would like to hear what you all have to say about this ongoing situation below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.